Welcome to this explainer. Okay, if you're anything like most people today, you are probably, well, exhausted. Modern hustle culture literally tells us every single day that life is this relentless race, right? We're constantly pressured to optimize, to climb the ladder, to maximize our wealth, and to build this ultimate master plan for peak performance. But what happens when that relentless pursuit just leads to massive burnout? What happens when an unexpected crisis hits and the whole house of cards comes tumbling down? Today, we are looking at a fascinating framework called the Cangyan System Model, or CYSM for short. Created by Cangyan, a veteran systems engineer with 40 years of experience, this framework offers a seriously powerful antidote to our modern anxieties. We're going to explore how shifting our perspective from viewing life as a success game to treating it as an engineering practice might actually be the absolute key to genuine freedom.
So, I want you to think about this fundamental assumption for a second. What if life isn't designed, but run? We are taught to treat our lives exactly like corporate projects. We set 5-year goals, we map out the milestones, and we try to design the absolute perfect trajectory. But CYSM challenges that entire core assumption. What if life isn't a project you can perfectly design in advance? What if instead it's a complex, totally unpredictable system that simply needs to be kept running? You know, in engineering, you don't expect a system to run flawlessly without ever hitting a snag. You expect the unexpected and you build the system to handle the friction.
Okay, let's dive into this. The entire philosophy of CYSM is grounded in one super powerful quote. Performance can be achieved, survival is designed. Think about a high-performance sports car. You can tune the engine to maximize speed, that's performance. But if you strip away the brakes and the safety chassis just to make it lighter, well, a single bump in the road is going to cause a catastrophic crash. If you don't survive the drive, your top speed is completely irrelevant. CYSM argues that we spend way too much time obsessing over our top speed, our performance, and nowhere near enough time actually designing our brakes and chassis.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the survival protocol. This right here is a massive paradigm shift. The traditional mindset is constantly whispering in our ear to maximize everything, get the biggest promotion, make the absolute most money, grab the highest status. But CYSM flips this entirely on its head, acting more like a super stable fortress than a precarious tower of blocks. The priority isn't maximizing success, it's minimizing irreversible failure. Why? Because in control engineering, if a system's parameters are stretched way too tight just for the sake of peak performance, literally even a minor external disturbance will cause the whole thing to collapse entirely. So CYSM is way more concerned with building buffers. It asks, can this system keep running? Are we accumulating hidden risks here? Do we have options if things suddenly go south? Survival is the mandatory hard protocol. Success is really just an optional byproduct of a system that hasn't crashed.
Moving right along, let's get into Section 2, Signals over Master Plans.
So the old way of doing things is basically forcing our intentions onto the world, right? We literally say out loud, I am going to do X by the time I'm 30. But CYSM recognizes that the universe doesn't really care about your intentions. Instead of forcing a grand master plan, we need to become highly sensitive to environmental signals and constraints. The early direction of our lives is rarely something we just choose out of thin air. It's usually shaped by the constraints we're handed, and learning to recognize those signals is far more valuable than just blindly fighting against them.
To really ground this concept in reality, let's look at some highly specific, almost random-seeming signals that actually shaped Cangyan's own dual-track cognitive structure. In 1970s Singapore, strict school quotas forced him into a Chinese language school. It wasn't his grand intention, but it ended up building this incredible bilingual foundation. Having a father who was a carpenter and an uncle who was an electrician, these weren't choices. They were environmental signals that pushed him straight toward engineering. From a totally random photograph taken in 1991 to a moment of inspiration just watching a sparrow in a kitchen in 2025, CYSM views these not as random coincidences, but as critical data inputs. Life's starting points are constraints. But when you process these signals effectively over a lifetime, they are exactly what forms your actual life structure.
All right, bringing us to Section 3, Time and Stability. Here's the core equation of the entire model. Life outcome equals signal multiplied by time multiplied by stability. Listen, life is not a 100-meter sprint. Actually, scratch that. It's much more like a farming process that strictly aligns with the passing of the seasons. You don't try to control the weather, right? You plant the right seeds and you let the system run.
So the crucial point is understanding exactly how these three variables interact. The signal provides your initial direction. It's the specific seeds you plant based on the environment you're in. Time is the ultimate amplifier. Now, most of us view time as a pressure, like this ticking clock we constantly have to beat, but CYSM views time as an incredible asset. But here's the catch. Time only works as an asset if you have the third variable, stability. Stability means actively preventing those irreversible failures we talked about earlier. If your system is fragile, time will eventually expose that fragility and failures will just accumulate. But if your system is rock solid and stable, time just compounds your advantages year after year.
Look at the math here. It's actually striking. To put it into perspective, a modest but highly reliable return of 5.61% that you can sustain for 40 years without crashing is vastly, vastly superior to a high-risk 10% return that totally blows up after just 5 years. And this logic applies to literally everything: your finances, your health, your learning. Sustaining a modest, stable trajectory over decades easily beats short-term, fragile high performance. Time is the heavy lifting mechanism, provided you can just stay in the game long enough to let it work.
So how do we actually construct this stability? Let's check out Section 4, Building System Infrastructure.
Now, CYSM does not operate in some theoretical, perfect utopia. It is built in the gritty reality of life's fixed constraints. For instance, Cangyan manages real, heavy medical constraints: glaucoma, schizophrenia, and an absolutely non-negotiable nightly dose of 1 milligram of risperidone. On top of that, his working environment demands English, even though Chinese is actually a much more efficient cognitive language for him. These are not variables you can just optimize away with some trendy new productivity hack. No way. They are fixed boundaries. The entire goal of the system is to maintain stability and prevent collapse completely within these very real, very unchangeable constraints.
To survive within those constraints, you absolutely need infrastructure. Take a close look at the specific roles of health and capital here. We usually think of wealth as the ultimate end goal, right? But CYSM treats capital merely as an energy buffer. We're talking things like paid-off public housing, reliable passive income, and deep cash reserves. Capital doesn't prove your worth as a person, it simply fuels the system so you never have to rely on luck. Health, on the other hand, is the actual core infrastructure. It's not just about, not getting sick. It is treated exactly like a city's foundational power grid or water supply. The creator uses highly precise protocols, strict sleep management using natural aids like dates, a rigid 3+20 diet explicitly designed to reduce cellular aging, and a super consistent routine of 12 laps of swimming. This highly precise infrastructure is exactly what keeps the whole system online.
Which brings us to the climax of this explainer. Section 5, Freedom Through Inertia.
We really need to deconstruct the old belief about freedom. You know that whole doing whatever you want, whenever you want idea? CYSM argues that this kind of freedom is incredibly fragile. It relies completely on the external environment just magically cooperating with you. If the market suddenly crashes or your health fails, poof, that freedom instantly vanishes. In the CYSM framework, true freedom is simply the natural byproduct of systemic stability. It's the actual operational space that only emerges after you have established an unshakable health infrastructure and a massive capital buffer. You don't pursue freedom directly, you pursue stability, and freedom is just what naturally blooms from it.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate goal of the entire framework: structural inertia. Look, traditional self-improvement relies way too heavily on willpower and discipline, which, let's be honest, are exhausting and super prone to failure. CSYSM completely eliminates the need to rely on that by aiming for non-deliberate operation. When your health, your finances, and your routines are just so deeply aligned with your environment, doing the right thing literally becomes automatic. Think about it. It takes absolutely zero willpower for the Earth to orbit the Sun, right? It just sits in the correct structural relationship with gravity. When you build a proper, stable life system, your daily operations become just as automatic. You glide through life on structural inertia, freeing up massive, massive amounts of mental bandwidth.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to help you reflect on your own life engineering. Ask yourself, are you constantly exhausting yourself trying to somehow control the direction of the storm? Or are you finally focusing your energy on building a much better boat with enough buoyancy to ride out whatever wild waves come your way? Life is a long-term system running in a completely unpredictable environment. Design your survival, deeply embrace your constraints, and let time do all the heavy lifting. I really hope this deep dive into the Cangyan system model gives you a whole new lens through which to view your own daily grind. Until next time, keep building your systems.